"Get your stuff out of my room," Mike shouted, throwing my clothes into the hallway. I stood frozen, watching as my best friend of 12 years transformed into a stranger before my eyes. 6 months ago, he'd showed up at my door with a duffel bag and sob story about being evicted. Now he was evicting me from my own bedroom in my own apartment. "This isn't your room," I managed, my voice embarrassingly weak. "This is my apartment. I'm on the lease." Mike's girlfriend Amber appeared behind him, arms crossed over her chest. "Ryan, don't be difficult. You've been sleeping on the couch anyway. We just need to make it official." Her eyes briefly flickered down, avoiding my gaze. I stared at them, my hands shaking, as they turned against me. The worst part? I'd paid the full rent for the past 3 months while Mike was between jobs. I glanced at the stack of bills on the counter, all in my name. "I'm calling the landlord," I said, pulling out my phone. Mike lunged forward, snatching it from my hand and hurling it across the room. The crack of plastic against the wall silenced us all. "Look what you made me do," he snarled. Amber flinched slightly. "Mike, calm down. This is just temporary, right?" There was an uncertainty in her voice that Mike seemed to ignore. That's when I saw the packed boxes in the hallway closet. My books, my gaming console, my life, neatly packed away without my knowledge. They'd been planning this. I walked to the closet, pulled out a box labeled Ryan's Crap, and ripped it open. Inside, nestled among my belongings, was a lease application with Mike and Amber's names on it. The apartment address, my address, was written in Mike's messy handwriting. For a moment, I flashed back to sophomore year in college when Mike had covered 3 months of my portion of rent after my dad lost his job. "Man, that's what friends do," he'd said then. "How had that guy become this person?" "You're trying to push me out," I said, holding up the paper. The doorbell rang, and their smiles vanished. "I'm not leaving." I stood my ground as Mike positioned himself between me and the door. "This is my apartment. I signed the lease. I've paid the rent. You were supposed to stay for 2 weeks. The doorbell rang again. Mike and Amber exchanged nervous glances. "It's probably just a package," Amber said, touching Mike's arm. "Then why do you both look like you've seen a ghost?" I moved toward the door. Mike blocked me. "Ryan, buddy, let's talk about this." His tone shifted to the familiar, manipulative smoothness I'd fallen for countless times. "You've been such a good friend letting me crash here. We just thought, since you're always working late anyway, and sleeping on the couch," Amber interjected, "that we could formalize the arrangement. I've got a decent job prospect lined up. We'll pay you back for everything." The doorbell rang a third time, followed by a knock. "Mr. Foster? Ryan Foster?" "It's Jacob Miller from Cardinal Property Management." Mike's face drained of color. I pushed past him and opened the door to find my landlord standing in the hallway, folder in hand. "Mr. Foster? I was in the building checking on a noise complaint from your downstairs neighbor. While I was here, I thought I'd address something else. We received an unusual application for a lease transfer." He glanced at Mike and Amber behind me. "I assume these are the individuals in question?" "I didn't approve any lease transfer," I said, loud enough for Mike to hear. Mr. Miller nodded. "That's what seemed off. The signature didn't match our records." He handed me the folder. "This is quite serious, potentially fraud. I wanted to check with you in person before involving authorities." Inside was a lease transfer with my forged signature. "Would you like to come in?" I stepped aside, a sudden calm washing over me. Mike lunged forward. "Actually, we were just heading out. Family emergency." He grabbed Amber's arm. "No, please stay," I said quietly. "We have a lot to discuss with Mr. Miller." The landlord looked between us, sensing the tension. "Perhaps I should come back." "They forged my signature," I said, handing him back the document. "They've been trying to take over my apartment. I let my friend stay temporarily because he was evicted, and now he's trying to evict me." Mike's face contorted. "That's not what happened. Ryan offered to let us take over. He's just having second thoughts." Mr. Miller raised his hand. "I'm not here to referee disputes, but I will say that any lease transfer requires proper documentation and verification. Currently, Mr. Foster is the legal tenant." "Thank you," I said, relief washing over me. As Mr. Miller turned to leave, Mike shouted after him, "He can't just kick us out. We have tenant rights. We've been living here." The landlord paused. "How long have you been staying here?" Mike smirked at me. 6 months. That's established residency in Pennsylvania." My stomach dropped. He was right. I couldn't just throw them out, even though they were planning to do exactly that to me. "Actually," Mr. Miller said, Mr. Foster would need to follow formal eviction procedures. But he looked at Mike. Harboring unauthorized tenants violates the lease terms. So there are multiple issues to address. After he left, the apartment fell into tense silence. Mike broke it first. You really fucked yourself now, Ryan. If you try to evict us, I'll make sure your credit is ruined. I'll trash this place before I leave. I looked at my oldest friend, wondering how I'd never seen this side of him. Why would you do this to me? I asked. Because you're a pushover, Amber answered for him. Always have been, according to Mike. The perfect mark. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up my damaged phone. The screen was cracked, but thankfully still functional. I opened my banking app and checked my account balance, $341. Not enough to cover even the security deposit for a new place, let alone first month's rent, not with Philly's housing costs. With my next paycheck still a week away and my credit card almost maxed out from covering Mike's temporary expenses, I was financially trapped with them. Then I remembered Amanda from work, the paralegal who'd helped me understand my rights when my previous landlord tried withholding my security deposit. I'd helped her move apartments last summer, spending a whole weekend carrying furniture up 3 flights of stairs. She'd insisted she owed me a favor. I still had her number. I'm going for a walk, I announced, heading for the door. Where's your laptop? Mike called after me. I turned. Why? Just wondering, he said with a shrug that sent chills down my spine. I checked my bedroom, their bedroom now, apparently, and found my laptop missing from my desk. Where is it? Mike lounged in the doorway. Consider it collateral. You come back with eviction papers, you'll never see it again. I nodded slowly, processing this new reality. Anything else you want to tell me you've taken? Your PlayStation is safe for now, he said. But I'd be careful about your next move. I left without another word, the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. 6 months of generosity had led to this, homeless in all but name in my own apartment. The coffee shop was crowded, but Amanda had secured a small table in the corner. When I finished explaining my situation, she shook her head in disbelief. Classic case of self-help eviction, except they're not even the landlords, she said, making notes on a legal pad. They're squatters trying to become tenants through fraud. But Mike was right about established residency, wasn't he? Amanda nodded. Unfortunately, yes. After living somewhere for 30 days in Pennsylvania, even without a lease or paying rent, you generally have some tenant protections. But she held up a finger. That doesn't mean they get to kick you out or steal your possessions. She slid a paper across the table. Unauthorized subletting violates most standard leases. Your landlord could evict all of you. But from what you've told me, he seems reasonable. Let's work with him. I can't afford a lawyer if this gets complicated. I admitted. I'm not suggesting you sue, yet. But we need to document everything. I assume you have proof that you've been paying rent. I pulled out my phone and showed her my banking transactions. Perfect. And text messages about the original arrangement? The 2-week agreement. I scrolled through months of messages until I found it. Mike, dude, I'm desperate. Just need a couch for 2 weeks max until my new place is ready. We'll pay you back. Me, of course, man. Mi casa es su casa. Temporary keys under the mat. Amanda took screenshots. This is good. It establishes the temporary nature of the arrangement. Now, the laptop and threats. That's criminal conversion, possibly theft, and intimidation. Have you called the police? I shook my head. It's Mike. We've been friends since college. Ryan, she said gently, friends don't steal your bedroom and your computer. They don't forge your signature on legal documents. This isn't a friendship anymore. It's exploitation. Deep down, I knew she was right. I pictured Mike's face when the landlord showed up. Not remorseful, but angry at being caught. What do I do tonight? I can't go back there. Amanda hesitated. You could stay with me, but that might give them ammunition, claiming you abandoned the property. Do you have anyone else? My parents lived 3 hours away. Most of my local friends were also Mike's friends. I thought about my coworker Steve, who'd offered his spare room when I mentioned having roommate issues last week. Maybe, I said, but I need to get some of my stuff first. Don't go alone, Amanda warned. And record everything. Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state for audio, but you can record video in your own home without verbal consent. I left with a plan forming, not just to get my apartment back, but to understand how I'd ended up here. How I'd become someone that my best friend saw as nothing more than a convenience to be used and discarded. Steve was surprisingly enthusiastic about letting me crash at his place. Dude, My cousin went through something similar last year. His roommate from hell practically destroyed the place before leaving. These situations get ugly fast. After what you did fixing my car when the shop quoted me $2,000, it's the least I can do. Stay as long as you need. Before heading to my apartment, we stopped at an electronics store where I bought a small camera. Just in case, I told Steve, though Amanda's warnings echoed in my head. When we arrived, Mike and Amber were in the living room, looking startled to see me with company. "Who's this?" Mike demanded, standing up. "My friend Steve," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I'm here to get some clothes and my work stuff." Mike blocked the hallway. "Like I said, your laptop stays here until we figure this out." "Figure what out?" I kept my phone recording in my pocket. "You're living in my apartment without paying rent. You forged my signature on a lease transfer. You took my property. What exactly needs figuring out? You said I could stay." Mike's voice rose. "You can't just change your mind." "For 2 weeks," I countered. "It's been 6 months." Amber stepped forward. "Ryan, be reasonable. You're hardly ever here. We need this place more than you do. Mike's been through a lot. So have I." I cut her off. "Including paying for everything while you two played house in my apartment. I need my laptop for work tomorrow." Mike crossed his arms. "Make me an offer." "Excuse me. A cash settlement. You want your stuff back and us gone. It'll cost you." Steve stepped forward. "Dude, that's extortion." Mike ignored him. $3,000. Cash. Then we'll leave and you get your precious laptop back. The absurdity struck me like a physical blow. He wanted me to pay him to leave my own apartment after months of free housing. "I don't have that kind of money," I said truthfully. "You know that." "Figure it out," Mike shrugged. "Ask your parents. Take out a loan. Or we can make this place really uncomfortable for you." For a split second, I saw something flicker across Amber's face. Discomfort, maybe even shame, before she masked it with a hard stare. I glanced at Steve, who looked as shocked as I felt. "Let's go," I said quietly. Outside, Steve let out a low whistle. That was intense. "Your friend is certifiable." "I got it all on video," I said, pulling out my phone. "Including the extortion attempt." "Good," Steve nodded. "What's next?" "I need to talk to my landlord again," I said. "And maybe the police." The police officer reviewed my evidence with a neutral expression. "Technically, this is a civil matter regarding tenancy. But the laptop and extortion, those are criminal issues." Officer Martinez handed me a case number. "We can send someone to retrieve your property, but removing them will require formal eviction through the courts." "How long does that take?" I asked. "With a good cause like lease violations, unauthorized subletting, and potential fraud? Quicker than usual, but still weeks, not days. Weeks of homelessness while Mike and Amber lived rent-free in my apartment. Weeks of paying for a place I couldn't use. The injustice burned. What about my landlord? Can he evict them since they're not on the lease?" "He'd be evicting all occupants, including you," Officer Martinez explained. "But you could try working something out with him directly." Back at Steve's apartment, I called Mr. Miller and laid out everything: the forged documents, the extortion, Mike and Amber's plan. "I suspected something wasn't right," he said after a long pause. "Tell you what, you're a good tenant with a solid payment history. I have another unit opening up next month. Smaller, but same rent. I could transfer your lease there, then handle these squatters myself." It wasn't ideal, but it was an escape route. "What about my security deposit?" "Transferred to the new place. And I'll give you back whatever we can recover from the current apartment, though I suspect your friends won't leave it in great condition." He was right. I'd likely never see that money again. But I'd be free of Mike and the toxic situation. "I'll take it," I said. "But what about my stuff? My laptop, clothes, furniture?" "We can arrange a time with police escort for you to retrieve essential items. As for furniture..." He hesitated. "That gets complicated in these situations. Sometimes it's easier to start fresh." Start fresh? Walk away from everything. The thought was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. "One more thing," Mr. Miller added. "I'll need statements about the forgery for our insurance. We may pursue legal action separately." After hanging up, I sat on Steve's couch, now my temporary bed, and tried to process everything. In one day, I'd lost my home, most of my possessions, and my oldest friendship. All because I tried to help someone in need. Steve handed me a beer. "You did everything right today. Standing up for yourself isn't easy." I took a long drink. I should have done it 6 months ago when he first overstayed. Hindsight, man. You trusted a friend. That's not a character flaw, but it felt like one. I'd been a doormat, and Mike had walked all over me because I let him. Because saying no felt harder than sacrificing my own comfort. Am I wrong for cutting him off completely? I asked suddenly. He's in a bad situation now, technically because of me. Part of me still remembers who he used to be. Steve looked at me seriously. The Mike you knew doesn't exist anymore, if he ever did. You're not responsible for his choices. I nodded slowly, still wrestling with my conscience even after everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Amber. Mike doesn't know I'm texting you. Things have gotten out of hand. Can we talk tomorrow? Alone. I showed Steve, who raised an eyebrow. Could be genuine. Could be another manipulation. I stared at the message, conflicted. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to cut all ties completely. What if this was just another trap? But what if she really wanted to help? Am I being naive again? I asked Steve. Setting myself up for another betrayal? Maybe, he admitted. But you're not going alone, and we'll be smart about it. Only one way to find out, I replied, typing back. Coffee shop on Walnut. 11 a.m. Come alone. Amber was already waiting when I arrived, nervously shredding a napkin into tiny pieces. She'd applied makeup, but it couldn't hide the redness around her eyes. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down opposite her. What do you want, Amber? I kept my voice cold. To explain. And to give you this. She pushed my laptop across the table. I opened it, checking that it still worked. Mike didn't want me to take it, she continued. We had a huge fight this morning. I'm leaving him. Today. I waited, not offering sympathy or questions. You deserve to know the truth, she said finally. This wasn't just about needing a place to stay. Mike targeted you specifically. He told me you were his safety net, someone who never says no, who's always good for a loan or a favor. Each word twisted like a knife, but I kept my expression neutral. Go on. He planned to stay with you from the beginning. The 2 weeks thing was a lie. He thought you'd be too uncomfortable to enforce boundaries, and he was right. And the forged lease transfer? She looked down. That was my idea, actually. I work in real estate. I've seen how leases work. I knew we'd established tenancy by being there so long, but having the actual lease would give us leverage to push you out completely. I stared at her, rage building. Why are you telling me this? Because it was wrong, she admitted. And because I recorded him talking about it. She slid her phone across the table. Password is 7294. Open the voice memos. I did, finding a folder labeled insurance. Inside was a recording from yesterday. Mike, Ryan's such a pushover. Always has been. Remember when he paid our bar tab because I forgot my wallet? I've done that like 20 times. Amber, what if he fights the eviction? Mike, he won't. He avoids conflict like the plague. That's why I picked him. Easiest mark in Philly. By the time he grows a spine, we'll have this place locked down. I stopped the recording, feeling sick. There's more, Amber said. Plans to sell your stuff, the extortion scheme, everything. I recorded it all after I realized how far he was willing to go. Why? I asked again. Self-preservation, she admitted, not pretending it was moral awakening. Mike's unstable. When he threw your phone, I saw myself next. I need to disappear before he realizes I'm gone, and I need leverage to keep him away. I understood her calculation. So I'm your insurance policy now? We help each other, she replied. You get your evidence for the police and eviction. I get protection through mutually assured destruction. He comes after either of us. He goes down hard. It was cold, pragmatic, and exactly what I needed. Where will you go? I asked, not out of concern, but to assess the reliability of my new ally. My sister's in Baltimore. He doesn't know about her. I nodded, accepting the temporary alliance. Send me copies of everything. I already sent what I have. Check your email. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not everyone's like Mike. Don't let this turn you into someone who never trusts again. Too late for that, I said, but the hollow feeling in my chest suggested otherwise. Part of me, the part that had let Mike stay in the first place, still wanted to believe in people's basic decency. As Amber walked away, I opened my email to find a key voice recording of Mike planning the scheme, screenshots of his text about selling my belongings, and photos of the forged documents. The final message simply read, "Don't let him get away with this." Detective Reynolds reviewed Amber's evidence with growing concern. This goes well beyond a roommate dispute. We're looking at fraud, theft, conspiracy, and extortion. Will it be enough to remove him immediately? I asked. With this, she gestured at the files. We can get a warrant today. But I should warn you, confronting someone like this often escalates the situation. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Mike's manipulations, his calculated abuse of our friendship. Yes. 2 hours later, I watched from Steve's car as police officers led Mike out of my apartment in handcuffs. His face, when he spotted me, transformed from shock to rage. You'll regret this, Ryan, he shouted as they placed him in the cruiser. This isn't over. Detective Reynolds approached my window. We've secured the premises. You can go in now, but I'd recommend having someone change the locks immediately. Inside, the apartment was trashed. Furniture overturned, walls damaged, my remaining possessions scattered. A final, spiteful tantrum. I stood in the wreckage of my life and felt strangely calm. The worst had happened, and I was still standing. Mr. Miller arrived to assess the damage. This is extensive, he said, taking photos. More than the security deposit will cover. I know, I replied, but I'll make payments on whatever's left after you apply the deposit. He looked surprised. That's responsible of you. Most people would just walk away. I'm not most people, I said, realizing the truth of it as the words left my mouth. The old Ryan, the pushover, the safety net, might have run from this mess. The new Ryan would face it head-on. As we walked through the destruction, cataloging the damage, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Just heard the news from my police contact. How are you holding up? I looked around at my shattered life and typed. Better than expected. This isn't the end. It's a fresh start. 6 weeks later, I stood in my new apartment, smaller than the old one, but all mine. No roommates, no temporary guests. The furniture was mostly second-hand, but every piece represented a choice I'd made for myself. Mike had been released on bail pending trial, with a restraining order keeping him away from me. Amber had followed through, testifying about their scheme in exchange for immunity. My credit was damaged but recoverable. My trust in others, that would take longer to rebuild. My phone rang. Steve, checking in as he did every few days. How's the new place coming along? He asked. Getting there, I replied, looking around at the half-unpacked boxes. Thanks again for everything. That's what real friends do, he said simply. Hey, a bunch of us are trying that new brewery tonight. Want to join? My first instinct was to decline, to retreat into the safety of solitude. But the walls I'd built since Mike's betrayal wouldn't protect me. They'd only ensure I remained alone. Yeah, I said, surprising myself. I like that. After hanging up, I unpacked a final box containing a framed poster Amanda had given me as a housewarming gift. It read simply, "No" is a complete sentence. As I hung it by the door, I ran my fingers over the frame, thinking about the painful journey that had brought me here. Trusting Mike hadn't been my mistake. The world would be a colder place if we never helped friends in need. My error was letting him erase my boundaries one small concession at a time. My apartment was smaller, my possessions fewer, my circle tighter. But for the first time in years, I was standing firmly in my own space, physical and emotional, and no one could push me out again. Looking at that poster, I wondered if others had faced similar crossroads with friends who took advantage of their kindness. Had they drawn the line sooner, or like me, learned the hard way that generosity without boundaries isn't generosity at all, it's surrender? Was I wrong to trust a friend in need? Or was my mistake in not setting proper boundaries from the beginning? Would you have handled the situation differently?